Welcome to Public Safety Talk Radio, the podcast for all of our heroes in public safety, including law enforcement professionals, firefighters, EMTs, corrections officers, healthcare workers, and more. The show is proud to be a part of the growing National Police Podcast Network. This episode is sponsored by Police Mortgage. Police Mortgage is a full-service mortgage company dedicated to serving police officers and first responders. Founded in 2008, Police Mortgage offers a variety of mortgage products tailored to meet the needs of those who serve and protect. Police Mortgage, for first responders who are second to none. Hi, I'm Ken Bader, your host for Public Safety Talk Radio, and I have another awesome guest. I know I do, because we were already joking before I press record. Hopefully the laughter and the jokes and the fun will continue, but I have the distinct pleasure of having Diane Braun, who is the founder and owner of Braun Counseling Services. She has over 10 years of experience working in the mental health and substance use field. She has strong leadership skills to assist other therapists in obtaining full licenses. She has over 6 years of case management experience, which is interesting, which entail connecting clients with local resources and advocating for services. I can go on and on about the great Diane Braun, but let's just get her on. Diane, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
My pleasure. My pleasure. From the great area of Omaha, Nebraska, which I know very, very well. Great area.
It is. It's a very good area. We're becoming more of a volleyball nation
Really?
area. Oh, yeah. We've got two professional volleyball teams, plus the
Hmm.
Nebraska Cornhusker volleyball team, Creighton Blue Jay volleyball team.
Hmm. I did
Yeah.
not I did not know that. I think I've probably gone to Omaha at least a dozen times in my lifetime, and I've never seen anybody playing volleyball. Maybe that's because I've always been
Wow.
there in the winter.
No, we just are. Unfortunately, we lost. Our volleyball team lost once this year. Our Nebraska Cornhuskers lost once, and it was during the playoffs, so that was the only time. But we went to, I believe it was the Final Four this year,
Nice.
and then we lost. But
Well, that's a
amazing,
shame.
yeah. But
Well,
we're amazing team.
well, what isn't a shame is I hear you're doing some great works for first responders. I had the distinct pleasure to meet you at the Law Enforcement Survival Summit that's put on by the Wounded Blue.
Yes.
And I'm really glad to see that there's, for lack of a better way of putting it, a lot of resources out there for first responders wherever they're located now. And you're one of those people. And I want to dig in a little bit because, my wife's been in healthcare. She actually worked 30 years in case management. You and her would probably have a lot of things to talk about. um,
Right.
I am not a healthcare expert, but you see all those acronyms on the end of people's titles: LIMHP, LADC, CPC. You hear of psychiatrists, therapists, psychologists, life
Right.
coaches. What those are all similar professions. What exactly is a mental health and substance use counselor? What is it that you bring to the table?
Well, acronyms vary by a lot of times by state licensures and what the state's going to give you to do. And for me, an LIMHP stands for Licensed Independent Mental Health Practitioner, which means I can do all of that I need to do. I'm just one step below a psychologist
Mhm.
that so I can diagnose all major mental illnesses, those kind of things without having a supervisor, having someone else to support me. But the LADAC, the LADC, is the licensed alcohol and drug counselor. So, in other
Mhm.
words, a mental health therapist can also provide substance use or be a drug counselor. But I've gone to even specialize, saying that's something I really want to focus on, and make that something important. And then the CPC, that's kind of nationwide, certified professional counselor. So that way,
Got
if I
it.
go to different states, so it just makes the insurance companies happy and all that. And it costs it that way, the state, the more initials you have behind your name, the more the state gets for money to renew your license every year. That
There
kind
you
of
go.
things.
So you got to write out three checks is basically what you're saying.
Well, those are three. I actually have four
Okay.
in the state of Nebraska, four licensures, and one also in the state of Iowa. So five
Nice.
checks.
Wow, a lot of checks. Well, I'm glad
Right.
you're writing them because you're helping a lot of people. One thing I'm not shy about talking about in this program is I'm an alcoholic in recovery. I'll be 6 years sober next month.
For you.
So thank you very much. And so, my point to that is, there's plenty of us non-first responders that you could be helping. But
Right.
you've chosen to really focus on first responders, that is one of your niche. Why first responders specifically?
Um, Personally, it goes back, and this took me a very long time to really figure this out. Uh, right at, when I was born back X amount of years ago,
We won't
I'll
talk
just
about
say,
the date.
right?
Yours or mine,
Uh,
but go ahead.
right. I was the my biological parents or parent that was taking care of me did not do a very good job. And law enforcement, from my understanding, the stories I was told, came in a lot of times and finally said, you need to do something. This child deserves better. And so I was placed for adoption. My parents that I have now, that I had for the rest of my life, adopted me, and it was wonderful. But I was also raised by my parents that first responders were the greatest people in the world. My dad was retired. My dad was active, or I guess he was now our Air Force Reserve. That was it.
Mhm.
While I was alive, while he was when I showed up in the world, because he was full duty, or what was it called? Active duty. I know these
Active duty,
words.
yeah.
He was active duty when him and my mom first met. Then they adopted me, and then he just went reserves for the rest of the time until he retired. But I've had tons of family members and friends that were military, active duty, retired, reserves, uh, tons of family members that were first responders. I even have a son right now. My son's been a first responder volunteer since he
Nice.
was 18 and he's now 33.
Mm,
So uh, it just seems like the right thing to do. I've always had a passion to work for first responders because I kind of wanted to be one, but then I waited
yeah.
too long in life to really do something about it. But
Hmm.
there are unsung heroes. I know they don't like being called heroes because that's kind of a heavy thing to live up to then
Yeah.
because they're just humans. They're
Yeah.
just one of us that just do a very difficult job.
Yeah, I can concur with that. I spent most of my career in banking, but
A lot of that
for
too.
yeah, for a brief time I was going to be a first responder, and I think maybe some of the things I've been doing for the last 10, 20 years is to try and make up for that mistake of going
Yeah.
into banking instead.
I used to be a mortgage banker, a bill
Hmm.
collector. I used to go knock on doors
Yeah.
and collect things and steal, repossess things that people didn't pay for. So yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, oh yeah, there's a lot of fun stories. I've got some guys in banking that started off in collections, and there's a lot of fun stories about tow trucks and alleys and dogs and all kinds of
Hmm.
things.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And what's really scary is those people that I know actually enjoy doing that work.
I kind of liked it. I ain't gonna
Yeah.
lie. I kind of liked it. There's the adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
And so therefore, that's kind of what I like doing, with the first responders because I that's one of the ways I can relate to them about that adrenaline rush and wanting
Hmm.
that risk taking stuff. So,
Yeah. You don't
but I
pay,
don't
you
know.
don't keep your stuff.
Yeah, it's just I I just I love the first responders. I remember when I was 18, I was going to join the Air Force and become a military police officer, and then I don't know what I did, but um, part of me wishes I would have done that, but otherwise, if I would have done that, I might not be here.
Hmm.
And so I'm really grateful that I did make the choices that I did make to get to be here.
Yeah. Well, we were talking a little bit beforehand, before I pressed the infamous record button, and we were starting to get into a really good mode of conversation of, not everybody can be, to your words, a counselor to first responders. As my last guest, Dr. Tammy Sharp talked about is, first responders, have a tendency to break the everyday therapists and so forth
Right.
that aren't used to those stories. And maybe it's, your affinity for first responders, your personality, combination thereof is to, for lack of a better way of putting it, is you can take it.
Yeah.
You can hear those stories, and I think that's important for a first responder who needs help.
Right. And, one of the things that I've heard from a lot of first responders is okay, I suppose you want to hear my war stories. What was the worst thing? And da da da. And I'm like, no, I just want to hear, why are you here today?
Yeah.
But there are times I am a trainer for the International Critical Incident Stress Foundation, ICISF. I'm one of the national certified trainers for them, and I'm a member of our state critical incident stress management um, team for the state
Hmm.
of Nebraska. And so I go out to debriefings and diffusings. Then I also train members who want to be on our team. And one of the things that we have to understand is that we're going to hear really bad stuff. And if you can't handle it, that's okay. Not everybody's cut out for that. Like me, I can't work with kids. God, please, no. Give me a critical incident, but kiddos, that's just not my forte.
Yeah.
Um, there are certain things that fit for me, and I don't know, listening, being able to listen and not go, oh my God, that's
Mhm.
horrible, and then just start losing my stuff. Um,
Yeah. You can swear to a point on this show.
okay,
Go ahead, say
okay.
shit if you want.
Yeah. So I don't, to go lose my shit and then have
Yeah.
them say, oh my gosh, um, I need to be able to make sure that they feel like that's a safe place that they can, say, yeah, this was bad. And I think being able to having all that training and learning that stuff, but I don't know, for some reason it's never bothered me. It's not like
Yeah.
I can compartmentalize. I mean, I do have to do that, but it's not like I don't have other people where I go and say, okay, let me debrief me and work, if I would have anything that sat with me. I mean, I've got great coping skills and I'm able to tell them, look, it's not that things don't bother me. I just know how to handle things when things do bother me. And that's what I'm here to help support you on.
Right. Right. One of the things I've said for years, and I'm not licensed like you are. I've just had the pleasure to talk to a lot of professionals like yourself. And, having gone through some stuff myself, to use a technical phrase,
Right.
sometimes sometimes, I mean, I'm not trying to be naive, some police officers, firefighters, EMTs, really need some long-term assistance.
Yeah.
And others sometimes just need a conversation or two.
Mhm.
Maybe, in their mind they're thinking it's worse than it actually is, whatever that is. And sometimes just talking to somebody that isn't in your department, that isn't in your family, that, has a perspective where they could understand and listen and say, you're really okay. Maybe you
Yeah.
need to do this, that, the other thing, but you're not as effed up as you think you are. Is that off
Right.
base or?
Yeah. No, I mean, and that's a big thing is letting them understand that what they're experiencing is normal.
Mhm.
It's a normal reaction to, an abnormal event, whether
Mhm.
it's a critical incident that they experienced at work or even things at home. I
Mhm.
see a lot of clients that are going through uh, different life situations where uh, I have some that are the victim of a domestic violence incident.
Mhm.
Um, or their partner is going through, a substance use problem and it's caused problems in the relationship. And those are life events that happen to everybody on a daily basis. And because they're first responders, they're not sure how that's going to affect them. One
Mhm.
of the biggest things that first responders deal with, and I will have to say more likely law enforcement deals with, or even corrections that will deal with, is people getting a hold of this information and identifying, is it going to affect my job? Am I going to lose my badge? Am I going to lose my gun? Am I going to be splattered all over the news? I'm already getting a bad, so they're afraid to talk about it. Um, One of the things I even over explain when I have clients come in, my first responders, is I share with them, look, this is what my notes look like.
Hmm.
This is how, this is what gets put in my note for you. And what we talk about will not be put, details in my notes. And guess what? I'm old. If I would ever get called up, my thing is I don't remember because I'm old. And it is what it is. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, I've got to ensure that they feel safe. Like they make us feel safe.
Hmm.
I hear sirens go out. I hear a cop car go by, and I'm thinking, wow, someone's coming to help that. That cop's coming to help that person, or that
Hmm.
fire engine's going to go help people. And that brings me a safe feeling of safeness. And
Hmm.
I want them to feel that way when they come in here into my office.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things that you just mentioned that frankly we don't talk very much about on this show, and that's my failure, is domestic violence. And I think part of it is because, I hold first responders in pretty high regard, and to think about the idea of someone being good at the job of public safety, but putting somebody or more people of their family in harm's way because of domestic violence just doesn't sit well with me. So I think the question there is how much of that do you see from police and fire and so forth of domestic violence, and what's kind of the solution or treatment to that?
Well, mostly what I'm seeing, believe it or not, is not the first responder themselves
Hmm.
or the perpetrator. They're the victim.
Interesting.
And that they're being, manipulated, or the perpetrator, the other partner is saying, well, if you don't do this or if you do that, I'm going to say you did this or that and you'll lose your job,
Hmm.
because they know the volatile, you know, um,
Yeah. Especially in the world we live in now. Yeah.
yeah, that if you say anything, it's you're guilty first. And
Hmm.
then um, I know of a very personal incident where a family uh, member called and reported that their parent, who was a first responder, pushed them, strangled them. Well, what it
Hmm.
was is that the adult young adult child, didn't like how the parent was parenting them. And so
Hmm.
they called, and then bam, next day on the news, this person was booked, da 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 da, and now it's being investigated. And prior to even getting it booked, the child was calling up and saying, well, that's not exactly how it happened. I was just mad, and this is what happened.
Yeah.
But it's too late.
Right.
It is too late. And so that fear in those first responders is real. And so they're afraid to know what they can say or what they shouldn't say, and how to keep themselves safe. And they're like, and so they take it.
Mm.
They just take it.
Yeah, I was unaware of that. Like I said, that's something we haven't really delved into the
Mhm.
show. And yeah, that's terrible for everything that you've got to go through on the job and then worry about that, at
Right.
home. Yeah, how do you even deal with that? I mean, divorce,
Tough.
well, how do you even deal with that type of situation?
You just, for me, the biggest thing working with anybody that's in a domestic violence situation is that it's not my job to tell them what to do, because then
Right.
I'm controlling them just like their perpetrator.
Hmm.
I help them problem solve and ask them what is it that they want? What would they like to have? And is that a possibility for that to be able to happen? And how to protect themselves.
Hmm.
At first, maybe we didn't like officer worn cameras, but we found out that a lot of times it's to the officer's benefit, right?
Right. Yeah.
So then it's like it's okay to have a camera in your home to protect you, because if a spouse is saying you threw this at me or you did this, and so we can all raise our voice. That's okay. And we
Hmm.
might even slip up and calling someone a bad name.
Yeah.
Okay, we're mad. We're
I ne
human. We get
I
to do
never
that.
do that, by the way. Yeah.
Right. I will say that to my dog sometimes when she barks at 4 in the morning. It's like, oh, stop. But I mean, we're okay to do that, but we'll have people escalate and say that, and it's like, prove it.
Yeah.
So I've talked about safety like I would talk with anybody. I've have a history prior to working in mental health. I worked as an advocate for domestic violence and sexual
Hmm.
assault. So I would help I safety plan. And, do you have your resources? What, finances, all those kind of things.
Yeah.
And you just safety plan with them. And it's, one of them I've seen is like, well, I don't want to hurt my spouse because I love my spouse. I said, I understand that, but you also need to protect yourself.
Yeah.
You deserve that protection. You are no value, you are not valued less than anybody
Yeah.
else.
Yeah. Here's off the cuff question, but perfect person to ask it to is, in those situations for the person that's actually causing the domestic violence, perpetrating the domestic violence. Yeah, is there truly help for that person psychologically, or, is it just, a personality disorder that you're just screwed, to use another a very technical term.
Be It could be some of both. I mean, it depends, and it's up to that individual. Just like if you were, um, you know, an addict, when you're ready to make a change, it's up
Yeah.
to you to do all the hard work. Um, and there's always I'll work with a perpetrator as well as a victim. I won't work with the same couple ever.
Right.
And that's the other thing, as I tell them, it's like, well, they want us to go to couples therapy, not until they have their own and they're doing their
Hmm.
own work and they get better. You can't work on the relationship until you work on you, and that
Right.
puts that other person at risk. But um, it's, I've also seen, I have worked with one where I'm working with the spouse and the perpetrator is a first responder in those categories that we've talked about. And they're like, I'm afraid to leave because if
Hmm.
I do, um, I won't have this, finance, safe home,
Yeah.
any of that. And so you just say, look, we don't have to do anything today, but just get support from me. And if you decide to leave or you want to take further steps, then we'll go from there. But, you know, nothing has to be done today and know that it's
Mhm.
safe here.
Yeah.
And because I mean, think about it. First responders, you go to work and you got your adrenaline running and you're done, and then you go home, you're expected to where you can go decompress. Instead, the job is where you decompress.
Hmm.
So you might not be as good at your job. And at home, you're on those walking on those eggshells and you're on hyper vigilant. And if you never get that opportunity to have that cortisol dump and relax and feel safe, my gosh, what are you putting these guys, when I say guys, I mean our first
Gals. Yeah.
responders, guys
Yeah.
and gals, what are we putting our people through? That's tough.
Exactly. Yeah.
And we're expecting them to be able to be on game all the time for anything that's not scripted out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a tough life.
Hmm.
Definitely in that situation. So, switching gears slightly, one of the questions that I enjoy asking professionals like you that work with first responders from, of different roles. Um, do you see some differences in the issues that come into your office? For instance, do you see more substance abuse from police? Do you see more PTSD from firefighters? Do you see some differences in the issues that you're dealing with given the roles that they're in?
Really? Not a whole lot. Many of our first responders, a lot of them will have history from being in the military a lot of times.
Hmm.
They transfer after they do a short stint or a full stint in the military, they'll transfer over to like a first responder role. But I haven't really seen a lot of, like, oh, I see more substance use from firefighter or corrections or this or that. Or
Hmm.
a lot of it mostly is family.
Hmm.
It's how it's not as much as the job as it is about life outside the job because they've got an SOP for the job for pretty
Hmm.
much everything. So they've got their book, they know what to do. If they got a question, they look it up. Um, they've got, how do I handle this? If they can't find it in their SOP, they go to their supervisor, right? And they get
Mm,
answers. They don't do that at home, and they don't think that they can ask. I had to encourage someone to a first responder to allow their family to help them. And they said, "Well, I don't like to ask for help." I said, "I get that, but I can tell them as a wife, something that I long for is for my husband, who's great at everything, to
mhm.
sometimes say, 'Hey, will you help me with this?' Even if it's minimal.
Yeah.
That makes me feel like I'm part of them." They go, "Wow, I never thought about that." And it's that connectedness. I said, "You don't think about, you know, officer needs assistance. You have no problem asking for assistance there, right?"
Mhm.
Well, no. Same. It's we just gotta I gotta help them with what they're good at in their
Yeah.
job and how to transfer that over to civilian life.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never really thought of it that way, but um yeah, yeah, I always I in my later years, and I don't
We're
know
gonna
if
get
this
better, think about things as we get older, right?
yeah, I don't know if it has to do with the sobriety or just being older and wiser or a combination thereof. Is, in business, you always think about, okay, I will do what I'm not going to delegate the things that I do best. But, if I have somebody on the team that clearly has the skills to do something better, I'm going to delegate that. And, I know at home, I get frustrated easily. I don't have a lot of patience. Big surprise there. My wife, having worked in 30 years in healthcare and case management, has the patience of Job. I don't quite even understand it. So a lot of times if I get frustrated with something, rather than, get myself in some kind of a tizzy, I'll just say, "Will you please take care of this before, I go nuts?"
Right?
And she usually goes, "Oh yeah, you just do this, that, and the other thing." I'm like, okay, I
Gotcha.
feel stupid. I'm
Hmm.
gonna walk in the other room now. But I think that it's that idea of I don't do this very well. I have somebody in the home that does. Yeah, it's not a weakness to have somebody with the skills to be able to do that in the home, and I think
Right.
that's got to be rewired in some people's heads.
Right. And also understand just because you're a first responder doesn't mean that you're excellent in everything else
Yeah.
either. Uh, I am not a, I'm not skilled. I suppose I could be, but I do not like yard work, right? I know that.
Me neither.
So my husband, his whole family is in farming. They were in
Mhm.
farming and he grew up and like that. He loves being out in the yard, or at least I think he does. I don't know. I don't ask because I don't really want to know because it might change the dynamic of the house and I don't want to
Right.
mess
That
it up.
that would suck for you, yeah.
Right.
But anyhow, continue.
But I mean, he does a great job. I mean, he does a beautiful job. And so I let him do that. I know what my limits are, and it's okay to identify that. I tell my first responders, you are human and
Mhm.
understand that you are human. Understand that it's okay to not be okay sometimes. Understand it's
Yeah.
okay to ask for help. And our spouses really like, our partners, our family members really like it when we ask them for help because then we don't see them as on a pedestal and we're down here. It helps bring us back up there. So it's not necessarily you showing a weakness, it's you're showing them that they're normal and that you need them as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. One of the things that I've seen pretty much vicariously is people being really damn good at the job.
Hmm.
Being a great firefighter, a great EMT, a great police officer, so on and so forth. And yeah, that for a lack of a better way of putting it, that the job gets the best of that person.
Hmm.
And then, maybe the second best is hanging out with friends, going to the bar, and the least, the worst that gets to be seen, the worst version you see at home. And I don't
Right.
think that it's intentional. I think that it's like, okay, I'm at home now. I don't have to, be nice. I don't have to, speak in a normal tone, because it's, my supervisor. I don't have to de-escalate with somebody I just pulled over. It's my kid, it's my
Yeah,
spouse. Yeah, you see a lot of that, and I think that dynamic is both not only somewhat expected in that kind of job, but also the detriment to what should be most important, which is your home life. Can you speak to that a
right.
little?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's kind of like the family feels like they get what's left over.
Yeah.
And it's like, why do I always get leftovers? Why don't I get the main meal sometimes?
Hmm.
And what happens is what I will tell the family members is like they feel that means that they feel really safe with you.
Yeah.
And to know that they feel like they can just be genuine and who they are and take off all the armor and everything that they need to so they can just be there for you. However, you need to express to them if you haven't told them, hey, this is what I need from you. If you're not having that communication, you can't expect them to read minds. You can't expect them, you know, to be on point because this is where they want to be off point. They want to be able to relax. So you have to just have those sit down conversations with them and they're like, "Well, how?" And there's a worksheet that I've used for the whole entire time I've been in as a therapist, the basic communication skills. And I said, "You'd be surprised how well it works." And to let them know. And I will tell my first responders, if you're not giving enough time to your family,
Hmm.
who's going to be there when you hang up that, your helmet or your gun belt? Who's going to be there for you? You
Hmm.
want your family to be there because things are different. Once you retire, you think that you're going to sit there and have all these buddies and everything else. I heard you talk about, I was listening to one of your podcasts. It was a couple, it wasn't a more recent one, but it was about with that one of the gentlemen does the magazine, and you guys were talking about innovation and advancement and how a credit union went and made a lounge for the
Oh, yeah, yeah,
firefighters that were
yeah.
retired to
Right.
hang out. So it wasn't like, oh, this was so advanced. It was just made common sense to give them a
Hmm.
spot so they'd be out of your way, right?
Yeah. Right.
And I said, we don't have that all the time. A lot of times when you're retired, you don't hear from your guys.
Hmm.
You don't hear from your buddies. You don't hear from your brothers and your sisters. And you've got your family. Now you've got to try and reconnect with them.
Yeah.
Don't shut them out. And so, those are the things I ask them. Where are you struggling right now? What is important and who's going to be there at the end? Um, you can balance. It's when I've taught, I teach a lot about when people are working on just recovery, how recovery has to come first and then
Hmm.
work life, family, and everything else will fall into place, but you still have to have a balance. Some days gets more than others. Some days it's more family, some days it's more work,
Hmm.
but you still have to make that time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great perspective. And, I think maybe that lends itself, I hear this, really depressing stat that, the average life expectancy after a first responder retires is actually really low. I mean, they got people dying, just years, not decades, but just years after leaving the job. And I'm like, that's really, really, that's really dark to me. And
Right?
I wonder if it's because, they don't like being at home.
Well, they don't know what to do at home.
Yeah.
What is it? Where do I fit in? A lot of times with military, I was married to a Navy, to a sailor, and they'd go out to sea for a month at a time. Then they come back and they try to get into that. And it's like, we're used to you not being here. So it's going to take time. And by the time we acclimate to them being there, then off they go again. And so our families get used to our first responder not being there. And then when they're there, it's like, ugh, I'm not sure if I want you here, you know, or where do I fit in? Where's my value? the first responder has difficulty. What is my value? What do I do? And it's just important to have those conversations. We have no problem going to, like, okay, after we have an incident, this is how we debrief or whatever, and this is what we do. And we work that out so we know how things go. We don't talk about what is life like after we retire. What do we do? What are our plans and what are we going to do before it actually comes up? And to make sure that we're taking care of that. And thank goodness we have so many resources. We have financial planners. I know you and I have met a couple of them that were at that conference, even that
Right.
just focus on first responders and how
Yeah.
to help them. And we need those things. We need to tell them it's not just about um, what you do next, whether you're going to go, hand out carts at Walmart. When you retire, what are you going to do with your whole entire life and that whole piece? Are you going to continue to exercise? Because sometimes first responders will exercise almost every day, if not daily.
Yeah.
Then they don't have to, and it's like, and they let themselves go. They have to realize what are they going to do. And when we take away something that we're passionate about, whether it's alcohol, drugs, being a first responder, whatever, we have
Mhm.
to fill that void. And we have to talk about it beforehand versus later when it's already there.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So Diane, I could talk to you for another hour, but you definitely have more important things to do than to talk to me for another hour. You got people to help. So as we begin to kind of wrap this up, one of the questions that I ask, many professionals like yourself, which is probably not a fair question, but I'm going to ask it anyway, is, if there was a number one tip, I know you deal with a variety of different issues that people need to overcome. But if there's a number one tip, if there's somebody that's struggling, somebody, that thinks they need help, somebody, that's in some kind of a crisis, whether that's big or small, is there a number one tip that you would give to say, try this or do this to start?
I would say first, call someone,
Yeah.
anyone. It doesn't have to be a professional. Um, call a peer support program. So many of our departments now have peer support. Um, and I know more departments are looking for not just a basic EAP, but a culturally competent EAP program.
Hmm.
If you have that, look up these resources. There's tons of them out there for our first responders, but you could always call, the 988 number for the suicide hotline, and ask for help. 911 still works, and just say,
Yeah.
hey, I'm struggling, but call someone. Know that
Yeah.
it's okay to not be okay, and that, you will be all right in time. It just might be a different all right, but ever. And it doesn't matter big or small, you know, just talk to someone.
Yeah. Yeah, if I had done that, then maybe I'd be sober for more than almost 6 years.
But you might not have been the Ken that you are now, though.
Yeah,
So, I mean, who knows? I mean,
yeah.
there's we could always go through shoulda, woulda, couldas, and if I would have, and all
Hmm.
that. But you know what? Um, there's a lot of things I could have done a lot different in life, but I really like who I am today. I have a feeling you
Yeah,
probably like who you are somewhat today, right?
yeah.
And so,
A
you
lot
know,
better than 10 years ago, that's for sure.
yeah. So then it's okay. It doesn't matter. It's all right to be where we're at right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that, and just as a side note, I'm proud to be one of the board of directors to the Wounded Blue, and they have a peer support line. You can just
Yes,
go to the woundedblue.org. They have a peer support line. Guys that
yes.
were in the job, on the job, and I think that is perfect advice because that's a good place to start. Sometimes it's actually in you could let me know if I'm just naive on this, but sometimes it's actually easier to talk to a stranger that doesn't know
Mhm.
you but understands your perspective than it is to
Yes.
talk to somebody you know.
Absolutely. And the nice thing is, I will tell you what, the Wounded Blue, I did not know of them until just earlier, my guess now it's last year, till early of 2025.
Hmm.
And of all the conferences I've been to for as a therapist and everything, that was probably the most uh, the most perfect conference for me.
Mm,
I've won as a therapist. It was so many first responders. I once never felt not included. I felt like I was at
yeah.
home. Even as a therapist from the outside, I felt I told people, I said, I found my spot. I found my people. And that conference is so amazing. And watching what the Wounded Blue does, I love it. I think they're amazing. Start there, start with a stranger. I connect with so many people nationally about where resources are. Don't worry where you're at. Just ask anybody for help and you can get it and they will direct you. And if you don't get what you want, ask someone else.
Yeah.
But our peers are probably the best people for us.
Agreed. Agreed. So for folks that have watched or listened to this show that could use help from a Diane Braun, maybe they're, in Iowa and Des Moines, or maybe they're in Lincoln or something like that, or they just need to talk to somebody initially and find out, who can help, and they want to speak to a Diane Braun, how best can they find you out there?
I am I am right now, I'm listed through the National Volunteer Fire Department directory. I'm in the basic psychology today, but I mean, there's First Responder Foundation. Anything that's you can Google for first responders, they usually have a resource list of who they have, who they've recommended, who they've vetted, that are therapists that are culturally competent that are out there.
Perfect. Well, you are definitely a culturally competent professional. Diane, thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
Thanks, Ken. I appreciate it. You take care and you stay safe. Thanks for letting me be here.
I'm going to try, and it's been my pleasure to have you. And thank you to all of you who have either watched or listened to this episode of Public Safety Talk Radio. And we'll be back with you next week with another great guest. Public Safety Talk Radio is produced by Bader Training and Consulting. Public Safety Talk Radio is also proud to be a part of the growing National Police Podcast Network. The National Police Podcast Network is a dedicated media network powered by the National Police Federal Credit Union, developed in partnership with experienced podcast professionals and public safety advocates. Learn more about the National Police Federal Credit Union at nationalpolicefcu.com.